This is Dan Frank. We're talking today about James Eads, in particular about James Eads Howe. He is the grandson of James Buchanan Eads, who built this bridge in the background across the St. Louis, across the Mississippi River in St. Louis. And the unique thing about James Eads Howe, his grandson, is that even though his grandfather left him a sizable fortune, over $500,000, young Eads nearly starved to death because he refused to spend the family fortune because he did not earn it. And this reads like a Greek tragedy until you realize that it's a tragedy because we don't yet know the whole story. We don't know why Eads wouldn't spend the money. And the fact of it is, what happened was, I mean, Eads, James Buchanan Eads, his grandfather, was he built 7 ironclads. He held over 50 patents. He was instrumental in starting the diving bells. He almost increased the traffic into New Orleans Harbor by like 6,500% with his jetties, you know. And even when the Army didn't think it was possible, he said, "Well, I'll do it, and if it doesn't work, you don't pay me anything." You know, he was that kind of guy, you know. And here's his grandson, you know. He went to Oxford, and at Oxford, though, he became indoctrinated in what's called the Fabian Society. And when Eads came back with that indoctrination, he didn't want to spend his inheritance. He said, "I didn't earn it. I don't feel like it's mine to spend, even for food." He eventually did, but I think he actually did eventually starve to death because he wouldn't spend the money. This fortune was his, and he was one of the few that had it because, you know, in '29, when the market fell, a lot of these heirs and heiresses became paupers overnight. Not James Eads, because why? Because he wouldn't touch that money. It was sitting in a bank vault in St. Louis with his name on it. It wasn't in the market. So he came out of the stock crash of 1929, in good shape with over $500,000 in cash, you know. But it's a moot point because it didn't do him any good. You know, he wouldn't spend it. He just wouldn't, you know. Now you look at the Fabian Society, they're socialists out of the Frankfurt School of Germany, which is the philosophers Kant, Hegel, and hence the Hegelian dialectic. And that's at the core of what we want to get at here. You know, there is this thing called the Hegelian dialectic, and it sounds like a big word. Actually, it's a simple little thing. You know, really it is. It's as simple as Adam and Eve. You know, God did. That's what Hegel and Kant take credit for. But you know, hey, God did this thing. You know, what they said was that when you divide something, it produces a power. It infuses movement into it through division. That's the Hegelian dialectic. If you want to move something, divide it. But it is as simple as, like, you know, Adam and Eve were divided. And God knew then, because of that division, they'd be compelled to be brought together. You know, it is like, you know, you can take a nut or a bolt and you can beat at it. You know, you're not going anywhere. You take a screwdriver and inflict on it all you want. You take a wrench with 2 sides and you can tighten or loosen it right up. You know, it's when you divide a force, a new force is created. It's the same like an airplane wing. Has lift. Why? Because the distance flying under the wing for the air to flow under the wing is shorter or longer, I can't remember, than the distance going over. One's longer than the other, and that separating and having a longer distance and a shorter distance up and over the wing creates this force called lift. You know, it is a simple thing. It's like, you know, where would be we if man and women only had one lip? You know, I mean, our whole civilization was greatly catapulted for by the fact that God gave us 2 lips, you know, and they're great little kissing machines, you know. So, I mean, it wasn't anything new, and don't be scared of it, you know, the Hegelian dialectic. It means that there's power in division. The thing about the Fabians, though, so many other groups of that era, and even still today. I mean, George Bernard Shaw was the most famous of the Fabians, H.G. Wells, but even most recently, Tony Blair, who was Prime Minister of England during the Bush years, is still going strong. And what they do is they piggyback, they're socialists, and they piggyback their socialist agenda onto other causes like Republican and Democrat. They use that division and they whipsaw things back and forth, but yet every time this thing cycles, and that's all we're seeing in recent decades, is a cycling in politics. Every time it cycles, the Fabian agenda goes forward another notch. You know, that's why one of their logos is a turtle. You know, the other one is in the famous Fabian window. It's on my site. It's a little coat of arms above this world that they're beating on. That's their idea. See, they think man can fix everything. They're socialists, and that's the way they're going to fix it. You know, so they're beating on the earth. You know, like it was an anvil. You know, but right above that, you'll see a little coat of arms, and there's a dog in there. But what it is, it's a wolf. But you notice it has like a sheep's clothing on it, you know, and of course that's pretty biblical, you know. It's not in a positive sense, but it's biblical, you know, and that's what's going on there, you know. And we as Christians, we need to be not taken into this, that, you know, that man is going to fix the problems, that all we don't want to put our hope in republicanism or Democrats or environmentalists, or lack of environmentalists, and yet increasingly we're sent into these into this division. You know, well, that's the Hegelian dialectic, is what it is. You know, and it's the thing that the groups like the Fabians and others use to propel their agenda on. It's piggyback right on top. You know, they pull the strings behind. You know, we whipsaw back and forth the Republican Democrats just like we have been doing, and with each increment, you know, they're getting their little tortoise shell agenda is taking another step forward. It's very slow, but it's very powerful, you know. And yet the thing they share in common is they don't believe in, you know, prayer is not, they won't necessarily renounce God. They try to leave that alone, you know. There's groups here that, like the Shriners, they'll say, well, you have to believe in God, you know, but they don't check on it. And there's no call to anything, you know, but God's very clear, you know. And the thing that you know, he says, if you don't pray, it isn't going to get fixed. You know, Elvis Presley put it so simply in his song, Crying in the Chapel. You know, everything is fixed when we come before God in prayer, and not before, and through no other means, you know. And that's the thing about the Fabians and so many of these other groups, is they omit prayer. Man is going to fix it. Man's got the answer. That's why those guys are in the Fabian window. They're over this anvil with the earth, and they're hammering on it, you know, because they're going to fix it. Socialism is the answer, you know. And that's why today we're given that, you know, there's a division between gays and straight, between the Republicans and Democrats, and we're even dividing more the gender difference between male and female, you know. They're using these divisions to move their agenda forward, piggybacked in the background. It's a mistake.